I'm Elisa Mortensen, and this is Undo Redo. Let's take a look at all the things that happen in life that we would like to undo and have a chance to redo. Hey to all my friends. So there's a lot of teenagers wandering around my house. My youngest has a bunch of friends over. It's the last week of school, so summer break is coming and everyone's excited. And it's pretty cold outside, a little bit rainy. Bear with me if you hear some chaos in the background. Right now, what I can hear really loud is some music in the distance, and I hope you can't hear it. But I was wondering, when I was thinking about this episode, like how many of us know that we're in a culture that shames anyone who complains? Whoever complains without saying some version of, I know I should be grateful, or it's going to be fine, I know it'll be fine. Like they say it either before or after they're complaining. And we really can't know for sure that it will be fine, or that like we know we should be grateful. So that's kind of just like an add-on to our complaint. I recently read a book called Toxic Positivity, and it's by Whitney Goodman. She begins her book by explaining how she knows that it's not popular to always see the pain, to point out the pain, right? And maybe always, I snuck that in there, but she literally says, I know it's not popular to see the pain and discomfort, to point out how hard life can be and to write a whole book on it. So she understands that it's not going to be received by everyone. And she often has comments and people that come to her and are trying to like get back at her for even bringing it to light and adding darkness to the world or whatever. If what we were on social media is pointing out pain and discomfort and how hard life can be, like that's not the point of social media, right? And some people are authentic and real, but it feels so much better to saturate life with happiness and get through with like the beatitudes and the platitudes and that type of thing. Like it's more acceptable to culture. But she says that she's refusing to ignore those who quietly suffer, which is many, really, if you think about it, based on the mental health numbers that are rising. People are just quietly suffering and they don't feel like they can be themselves. So the positivity culture has led many to suppress even the most minor complaints. And a lot of this is learned by the way we were raised, even. I was thinking about not acknowledging it because of the shame that it brings, right? Not being able to see the bright side is frowned upon. And you must start or end with the caveat of, I know I should be grateful, or don't get me wrong, I am grateful, but, right? So Goodman points out that the toxic positivity is fear-based, that friends and parents won't approve of us or accept us if we are, and like God won't even approve of us because the devil is negative, right? And God is positive. So thinking that God is supposedly wants us to be healthy, happy, rich, and if we fall short, we have to change our thoughts about it and our mindset. Well, she says that this mindset, and she argues that it can be incredibly damaging and that it prevents us from acknowledging and addressing our deep pain and sorrow. And it can lead to a cycle of unexpressed emotions. She says even the most fervent prayers of faith often don't fix things like they're asking God to fix it. And it doesn't mean anything you've done is wrong or that you're not right. And she talks about science and religion and how they've been known to, frame a certain problematic aspect of this kind of social norm in the pursuit of happiness, because it's not seen as acceptable to have issues, and it implies that you're broken and you need to be fixed. And she says, instead, we must simply accept that it's vital as a human to recognize all parts of the human experience, especially the dark and publicly unspoken ones. And we need to just take acknowledgement of it without making it mean something has gone wrong. It's better than adding the pressure on top to have a good attitude always and to pretend. What we have left after, in the wake of this, is those who can do it are the winners and those who can't are the losers. Like, no matter what's happening in your life, if you can remain positive and say all the good, right things, then you're good and you're acceptable. And everybody is like, oh, she's challenging, she has a challenging life and she's handling it so well, and things like that. And you can just hear that pretend in it. Like, we even celebrate pretend. And those who can't keep it together, and those who are like really down and really distraught or depressed or have anxieties, like, those guys are the losers. But when we have winners, those winners don't realize that it's not really all well inside of them. If you hear people constantly saying, no, but it's okay, it'll be okay, that just means they're trying to convince themselves that it really will be, because people who really believe it's okay don't say that. And very high anxiety exists in society now, because when things aren't seen as happy and perfect, they haven't been doing all the things right. What happens is, when you don't acknowledge it, the tension builds into deeper stresses and anxieties. And all it does is create a lesser experience for the people doing it. And we don't even realize it because we're saying all the right things. But it disconnects us from being present and seeing things as they truly are. If we're left dissatisfied with what is right in front of us, we're often just left wondering, well, why can't it be like we wanted, or at least like everyone else? We really are wondering, like, what is wrong with us? Because we're forced by a culture into shame and guilt over not being able to have this positivity. Whitney says that she advises to stop shaming yourself. And in the current culture, everyone forces smiles. And take a look at social media if you don't believe it. But it's totally normal to feel depressed, unwell, angry, and you don't have to be publicly vulnerable about it. Pretending is much worse. That's a whole other thing. But no one needs to know. And, public vulnerability isn't required. So do yourself a solid and just embrace your negative emotions. You don't have to tell anybody about it. Just give it some good acknowledgement. She also points out that well-being is seen as the absence of disease. And I thought this was really interesting. So when we have disease, there's an underlying judgment that we must not have what it takes to be well. It's so sad for you. That's too bad for you. And then you think that, like, not feeling good enough is hard for people. It's hard for people to witness and to be with. But it's especially hard for those with any ongoing illness when they're told to disregard all their disappointment and upset about it and just look for the silver linings. It has an unspoken connotation of you're not doing enough for yourself because you could be doing it better. As though they were being blamed for all of their health problems or their disease and their unrest, right? This, I believe, dates back to times long ago when you hear that people would ask, is this the sins of the parents if the child was born with an issue? Like, who sinned then? And when things aren't the way we'd like them to be, we need to be able to sit with it in our minds and not make it mean that we're wrong for doing it or wrong for having it or wrong for it being that way. Because some things will never make sense, and you don't always have to have a good outlook. We really don't know what's going to happen. Yeah, in the very end, of when life is over and we're all in heaven, fine, but expecting that of yourself too soon without processing the negative emotions and the negative thoughts is harmful. It's hurtful. And expecting others to do it is hurtful. This author also says it ends with those who are able to stay positive, like being the winners, and those who can't be positive are the losers. So telling somebody to recognize that, well, so many people out there have it much worse, like that helps with perspective, right? But it shouldn't and doesn't diminish what you're feeling about yours. Because it's okay. I mean, as if someone who has it worse means that you can't be sad. I mean, you can't be upset or have a hard time in your learning. You totally can. And we know, right, that science, like I said in the beginning, science shows that disease with acceptance empowers the one who is ill, right? They can become more creative. They learn to be better equipped to deal with it mentally and emotionally. And that alone lessens the intensity. or the duration of their experience. People who worry excessively about having illness do actually end up having more of it, but we can never totally have control over our health. There are just too many factors. So there's no need to guilt and shame us or anyone else for having it. She also brings to light this concept that is very thought-provoking. She says, we tend to celebrate the disabled and marginalized when they are outwardly seen as accepting and healthy and happy in their attitudes. And I just thought that was so interesting. The message here is like healthy and happy go together. And if you aren't healthy, you better be happy or you won't be accepted by others around you. In this like shocking statement, I reflected on how many times I was hurting. And I told someone and they disapproved of it and told me how negative I was being. And then when I said, but I'm being negative, like this person did these things and I just am dealing with some hurt. And they're like, yeah, but that person that I know has always turned things into positive. And you're just left feeling like you're not really heard. And then you lose friends over it because they think you're talking bad about people when you were expressing a pain and wanted somebody to listen. And then we have our own reactions and shame to it all, like it's wrong. And then we don't associate with that person anymore. I remember how I was unseen and how dismissed I felt, right? I was trying to be authentic in my pain, but it can be too much for others to just allow you to be hurting and to love you and to love them and to hear it all and not have to do anything to fix it or make it go away sooner or not like you, right? But they get uncomfortable and they want their discomfort to be your fault. So they hurry back to their silver linings and tell you that you should be more positive. And then they choose not to be around you again because you're too negative, right? But in certain situations, it's really cool to push someone into forcing a smile and pretending. And I'm just learning this. You guys, we're all just learning this. We can see clearly, right, in the world that positivity originates from good intentions and that it does in fact benefit and have really, really big effects on many things, on all things positivity does. Even when you talk positively to a plant compared to talking negatively, it does things. It's actually measurable, right? But if positivity leaves increased shame, inadequacy, and the feeling of isolation from a world that will not tolerate it, if you're not ever seen or heard because you have a need to be negative just for a moment here and there, then there's some underlying problems with this. I know negativity, we all know negativity is a magnet, and it does lead to more negative thoughts, right? It leads to more stress, the stress hormone release. It interferes with our memory. It interferes with our ability to learn. So the constant chronic looking for what is wrong and what is not right and being upset about it and complaining, right? It ruins the neuroplasticity in the brain. Like it's actually affected by this. Blood pressure increases along with cholesterol levels. Like there's real science behind this. It also being too chronically negative, right? It helps you, it's like keeping you in the problem. It blocks your creativity, and then you're less likely to find solutions, and then you become stuck. There's no relief or liberation, and there's no quality in your relationships because you will always see what is wrong. Okay, she explains how like highly effective it can be when planning is done in little bursts and not in excess. Because even optimists, right, who have dismissed themselves for years can finally be forced to address some discomfort, which all of us have different levels of discomfort tolerances. But complaining is a form of connection and it needs validation. So even the most optimistic person can find themselves complaining just a little bit here and there, and it's a really good way to pivot and to create awareness. But how can we not suck others or tear others down around us when we complain? The author talks about ways in which to support one another in a better way and never make it an issue of right or wrong. There's no right or wrong way. You have your way that works for you and they have their way that works for them, and both have the same right to choose. But when they're hurting and they're negative and you have more of a pull to push positivity, just be present with where they are. Not needing to like coax them or to try to change any of it. And in the book, she asks, why is it when anything threatens happiness, it's seemed as inconvenient and highly discouraged? That's a great question. Why? Whether you want the complaints and discomfort to be out there or not, we do need to appreciate to some degree that it is a guide. And it comes in order to redirect our thinking and to help us choose differently than the pain we've chosen. It just wants to be noticed, so try not to dismiss it right away. What I have been doing is I've been taking note of it, especially when it comes up at a very inconvenient time and it tries to hijack my brain out of something that I'm doing, that maybe I'm speaking or around a lot of people. And when I have a minute, I go back and revisit it. Like, what happened at that moment and what did I feel? Because exploration of this always leads to the discovery of it, and then you can overcome. But when it's gone unchecked and not acknowledged, it just keeps coming up with increasing intensity. That need for negativity and that need to complain until it gets attention. And it's that way by design. Like, it's meant to get louder until we do something, until we make some changes. What do we need? Boundaries, a little bit of self-care. Bubble baths are probably a good way to get your body to relax a little bit, but the real work is inside, right? So at least get curious about why it's there. It'll really calm it down when you really look inside yourself. Bubbly water can only do so much. Her end note to this book just reminds us that we're only all human, but we're meant to embrace like all emotions. And the lows don't mean anything's wrong, because you're not supposed to always be positive. At the cost of you brushing aside something that's trying to get your attention, because it needs your attention so you can pivot and grow from it. That's how we evolve. So the world says stay positive, and by default that implies avoid all bad emotions. Complaining is wrong. Suppress what you feel. Cover it up with you should be grateful, and basically denial, self-denial and self-betrayal. Because you feel the things, but you're dismissing it too quickly. But as we educate and become a more cultured way of being positive and negative and making space for both, the positive way that's appropriate is about making space for reality while you have hope and gratitude. And you can be grateful for the lessons of life and the learning you're having while it's all happening, but you don't have to like what's happening. And both can exist at the same time. You can not like what's happening and be grateful for the lessons, but just make sure you're paying attention to both of them. I just loved her take throughout this book, and I had so many aha moments, and they were related to my own beliefs and if and how I can hold space for others to change and shift, or if I judge too quickly and need them to move into a space that's happier. For me, maybe I'm adding to their shaming of their negativity. And so I really reflected inside. But as far as this episode goes, as always, if you think of someone, if anyone popped in your mind, there's a reason. Go share it with them. It's through us that our needs are met. Right? God's other children have needs, and He meets them through each other, through us. So be there for him, be there for them, and be listening. And I'll talk to you either on a call or next week's podcast. Put this to use, though, and let me know how you're doing and what you're thinking and feeling and how it goes, and spread some compassion. All right? Talk to others and talk to yourself through all your negativity. And I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.